Hello, Josh here again. On to day two. This is the day two review, which will be shorter than the video above and a bit shorter than video one. As I kind of skipped through the two races on day two, a day full of ecstasy and agony, really. So I arrive at day two. I kind of bounce out of bed at 7 a.m., having been up until about midnight the night before. Kind of in a good mood. Most of the horses I've tipped have run well. I haven't made a howler. Maybe I could have been a bit more confident or done something with a couple of shorter price ones that won, but that is being kind of picky, I suppose. All of the tips have generally kind of given me and any followers a run for their money. I feel like I'm reading it right. I feel like I'm in the zone, and betting, especially Festival Week, is all about in the head. And that does stem from that foundation of knowing the maximum amount that I can lose in terms of financially and betting wise. But it is pressure when you're putting your neck on the line of the biggest jumps racing week of the year, when you know people are following you. There is a certain pressure to that, because I like being right. I don't like disappointing you good readers, and I want to help you have the most enjoyable festival you can, and indeed help myself have the most enjoyable festival I can. So we rattled on to day two. What we took from day one, especially over fences, was in general the horses that ran well and were winning were at the front of the pack. They were in a very good position, or they were kind of, well, especially for the Ultima and the novice handicap, clearly they were unexposed in the novice handicap chase. But yeah, in general, the chasers were either unexposed and there was more to come in handicaps, or they were also in form and they'd been running well. And with the case of Kustar Savola, with the case of Shantu Flower, with the case of Mr. Whitaker, they had form at the course as well, which is vitally, or proved to be vitally important. There's a few things they had to take away. Prominent racing, in form, unexposed, had been running well, possibly course form. So I took that in the top of the head, thinking into day two. But now was the time, and now was the occasion for the hurdlers to step up, and not the chasers, which requires a kind of different, a slight tweak, a slight different thinking. Having watched all the videos back from last year, the kind of Sunday before, it was kind of lodged in my mind the kind of profiles of horse that were doing well, but also how it was more likely in the hurdle race that winners came from kind of mid-division or a bit further back, especially if there was a lot of pace on and they went hard at the front. That was the thinking going into the week. After the first day, I'm kind of thinking, oh, it's soft and heavy. They seem to be going slow at the front. Are there going to be hurdlers that get away on the front end, or is it going to be a case of needing to be held up further back? That was very much a race by race case, and different things kind of happened as the week went on in terms of how races were won and where the winners and those horses that kind of finished front, 3 and 4, and where they came from on the track. Still, as always, the most dangerous place you can leave a horse if you're in the opposition is kind of alone on the front end, and the best place to be is with an easy lead, going your own pace on the front end. That is still the case, whether it's in hurdles, jumps, or whatever. That is the best place to be. So we cracked on. Yes, day one was fine. A bit of profit to play with. It meant that the week could only get so bad, a kind of minus 15-point loss if the worst came to the worst. And so I suppose that's a bit pessimistic, but I like the freedom I suppose that gives me in taking a chance on some bigger price horses. Really, what I should have done is just kept reading this paragraph in front of you in terms of the trainers mentioned. In general, prominent racers did best. So this was my intro recap of day one before day two. Did best, ran crackers, stayed up there most of the way, especially over fences. It'll be interesting if that remains the case as we head into day two. Nicky Henderson is clearly in great form, as is Mullins. Elliott had a couple of prices run into the places, and those that ran poorly, bar Apples J, can't be a total shock on paper. Tizzard had done okay, Alan Kings went well, Nick Williams is clearly on form. I shouldn't forget Tom George either. We shall see how many more winners that group has. It would be a lot, and whether the likes of Nichols could join the party. And oh, I read that now. Actually, I'm reading that back live now for the first time. I really should have just focused on the horses from all of those yards mentioned a bit more than I did. So yes, and then I added some information pointed to by one of my readers. Do note that all non-handicaps on day one were won by horses in the top three of the BHA official ratings. Actually, the top two do best. As a way in the non-handicaps and the graded races of shortlisting and finding winners, using the BHA official ratings is no bad place to start. So we cracked on to day two. You can see the tips there. Blueberry winning at 28 to 1. Barra coming third at 20 to 1, 22 to 1. Fix Le Cap might still be running. Turning Goal clung on for fifth. I only declared at 4 places. Mastermind, he might still be running as well, stuck in the mud somewhere. I would need to watch that video back again, but there was joy and there was frustration in this, which I'll go through in a minute. So we get to Blueberry, and you'll see one of the horses that's just going to keep cropping up and still doesn't give me nightmares. I'm a bit pissed off still, but that's the way it is. And I am a restless perfectionist, as you may or may not know. So, race 1, Blueberries. I tick around to 6 minutes. I'm just going to flick through the Micro Systems qualifiers here, especially the trainers. You can see Barra appearing there. Top of the game there. Now, top of the game was a Nichols micro angle, which is 5 from 10 runners, 6 places, plus 72 in the last 10 years. No, last 5 years actually. My research for the trainer angles. His top of the game very, very nearly clung on and beat my blue, whatever his name is, Blueberry, which would have been painful because I didn't tip top of the game. I didn't have any money on for my own kind of betting pot. Any Mullins horse. So Blueberry appears there. Barra again for Elliott. I'll get on to the 450 in a minute. My God, you can see the horse there, and you can see the one that won in the Fred Winter. That may be the second horse in a year that's won the Fred Winter at 33 to 1 that appeared in various places in my blog, and I haven't even tipped half a point on it. Anyway, we'll move on. I'll reflect on that in a moment. So yes, and Townend, so the Townend stats, Blueberry there. So you can already see this horse that I end up tipping is appearing on a few of my general micro angles, and that's how I like to use them as kind of starting points, as a basis on which to add layers to my thinking. And yes, so here we go. Here's the shortlist. So then we've got, this is the first thing I do for each race. I look at my stats profile, what I touched on in the first video. I don't want to be too narrow. I don't want to be too restrictive. I don't want to deliberately just hunt out stats that only leave me 3 or 4 horses or 2, because then I'm blinkering myself. So I make a judgment on the strength of my own stats and go from there. So from my own research, I was looking at historically over the last 10 years, horses aged 5 to 8, 0 wins in the class horse race base. That is the class of race. I forget what this was. That's not class 1, 2. That is whether it's graded, listed, graded, grade 3, listed. That's a different class. Had won at least once on the last 3 starts. 0 to 1 wins in handicaps. Ran in a hurdle as defined by horse race base, or a handicap hurdle last time out. Those stats are 8 from 59 runners, 16 places, plus 94 to Betfair SP in the last 10 years. So there was a chance that I'd missed the winner, but I used that as a starting point. You can see the horses that hit that winning shortlist as it turned out. There is Blueberry. The Organist ran quite well, and will be interesting when step back up in trip. French bred could be marked up according to my stats. You can see Blueberry appearing on there. 4 to 5 wins in a career wins are positive. You can see those. Top 8 in the weights. Using that as a starter set of stats are 7 from 22 runners, 10 places in the last 10 years, plus 127 points to Betfair SP. That looked, interesting, significant. You can see Blueberry there. When I looked at Blueberry from a stats perspective, on my shortlist there, as you can see, hit those various stats above, the Townend stats, the Mullins stats. I'd have been quite an idiot not to back him, but I would be an idiot about 2 hours later. So that's that. So and then what else? So yeah, then we have Barrett, and then I tipped. I'll get on to the race in a second. So Blueberry. Hit the stat shortlist. I'll get onto the profile, which was interesting, and the kind of things I look for with handicap hurdlers at Cheltenham. Barra was because, Gordon Elliott had been in form. I didn't like the idea of a Gigginstown horse, kind of 16 to 1 or bigger, winning a handicap that appears on my stats that I haven't tipped it even to half a point, is annoying given the amount of work that I put into the Gigginstown stats, the Elliott, and all the different handles, and specifically Russell as well. So I wanted to make sure I didn't make that mistake again, which I did twice last season. Although I would go on to miss one at kind of 12 to 1, which would be annoying. So you get plenty of things right, you get plenty of things wrong. Let's jump over to the race, which is here, Coral Handicap Hurdle. You can see if I look at the results, sorry, that's the page I was on, Blueberry winning that, just getting up by a neck. That's kind of one of the other reasons why I do not get too agitated. You will rarely, I mean, maybe I'm too laid back and placid for my own good, especially when it comes to horse racing. I don't get annoyed with close pace finishes. Yes, I was annoyed from a professional perspective and not having a profit, but I won't be throwing things at the wall with Chantou Flyer or Miss Parfois. That's part of racing, and that proved it on the second day that, you know, I didn't have the luck in my favour that day, but I did on this and certainly this race and a few other results that followed, getting up in the shadow of the post and winning just. So you can't really moan. These things happen and you can't control them, and you best kind of have a clear head and get on with it. So Blueberry won, top of the game, very, very nearly beat me. Barra ran a cracker, and she's a mare as well. Really, really good run and good race there. I'd have to watch that back again for views on whether she was held up too far out or that is just as good as she was. You can see William Henry, who appeared prominent on plenty of the stats, ran well. The Organist ran well. I mean, this is a race that could work out quite well. There's old Burbank. Hopefully he might appear at Aintree. I keep saying that. So that's that. Let me, just as I tick round to 11.5 minutes, focus on the two profiles of what I look for and what intrigues me. I want to back something at a price generally in handicap hurdles, certainly 12 to 1 or bigger, and bigger the better, really. Never be put off by price, certainly at this meeting. So what am I clocking? What did I look at when I saw Blueberry's profile in front of me here? Lightly raced. There should be more to come, certainly in handicap hurdles. This only his second handicap hurdle run. I'm looking at that. They pitched him at Newbury in a Class 1 listed. That gives some indication they think he might have had some ability. And then what is an indication to me, or what really stood out and what I do look for, is some sort of big field form is definitely a bonus. And this one, absolutely hacked up going away in a 25-runner Fairyhouse race. It had produced some winners. It had produced some place horses. As always, I use two resources for all of this stuff. Horse Race Base, which I'm not using for the purpose of these videos, which I use for all of my stats research in terms of pre-meeting research and race trends and kind of other general trainer research, not within the race card. And then Gigi's Gold, which is this superb bit of kit here, the best bit of kit and set of racing tools in racing, no doubt about that. So I am looking for big field form. Some horses just do better in a bigger field because they get a stronger pace to run at, or they might be keen sorts and they like to be settled. They might just like running with their friends, and the more horses they're surrounded with, the better. Some horses are better in small fields, some without doubt are better in big fields, possibly because of the pace they go, possibly because, like I said, they like being settled in and around horses. They like a bit of hustle and bustle, you name it. It was a good thing seeing with a 25-runner winning a 25-runner race was a positive. Then on what I mentioned before in the first video, looking for a touch of class. Had won a novice listed hurdle, had won a Group 2 hurdle that had produced, before this was like 10 from 40, produced quite a lot of winners, quite a lot of placed horses. I did have a look at the form, I think. But so had won a Group 2, Grade 2, sorry, had produced lots of winners out of it. Then pitched into a Grade 1 at Punchestown in April. The first race he had really run on good ground. That might have been an excuse, but ran okay. It's a Grade 1. You can forgive them that kind of performance. Then had a long gap. Returned the last time out at Leopardstown after quite a stretch. Travelled well up. I watched the video back before tipping. Travelled well up till about 4 out, and that's another thing. Watching videos is important. It does help. You can spot things. You can get a feel for the race, for the horse, and that is something I've tried to do a bit more of, and certainly did at this meeting, and to add to my punting in general. So we had that. There was an excuse for that bit off run. If you took the view, which I did, that this horse was actually being aimed at this Cheltenham meeting, they used this run for its first time in however many months to get a run into its legs. Travelled up for a fairly well up until 3 or 4 out and found very little, not knocked about. The thinking was that he would come on for the run. And then he turns up at Cheltenham. What is he doing differently? Is there a reason why he might step forward on that recent form? Well, he's had a run. He's trying a new distance for the first time. So there is a hope that he may improve for the step up in distance, and it may step and tap into stamina that as yet hadn't been tested and hadn't been stretched. And that was the reason for him improving on top of his current handicap mark. Very often in Cheltenham handicaps, that is the type of horse you want. You do not want horses with proven form that have been there and done it, especially in handicap hurdles. They generally go to horses that are progressing up the ladder, and you are looking for a reason for why the horse should improve on recent form. So getting all that together, he's lightly raced anyway, and there was a thinking this was his first or second race run in a big field. The distance, there was a hope that he might improve for it. He might not have stayed. That was a risk, and it's in that situation that you want a big price, or I certainly want a big price, which is why 25 to 1 plus just stood out. So I've got all of those things. I've got Blueberry's place on all of my stats shortlists, on all the other little pointers, on the Townsend pointers, on the Willie Mullins pointers, 28 to 1. I'm a bit bullish. I know I've got a few points to play with now. The week can only get so bad. Let's throw a point at. As it happened with the sad injury to Ruby Walsh, I'm not sure if Townend had the choice to get off or not, but in either case, he ended up on Max Dynamite, and Mark Walsh came in for a fantastic spare ride. And rode it an absolute peach. Townend would have won on it, no doubt, as well. But those stats are about behaviour. So the fact that Townend had actually changed wasn't necessarily a negative, because he was originally booked on the horse. And then what was the other tip? Barra. Let's have a look. Again, had one win to her name, and that was in a big field maiden hurdle. And my thinking was, and then she's kind of potted around. She ran well in a grade 2, at the Cheltenham Festival, so she had Cheltenham form. She's got a touch of class, however weak and piss poor you think those races are, it's still a grade 2, touch of class. Then ran well in a grade 1. And had big field form, and this was her only a third run really in a big field cavalry charge. Her second one being the run before this, which was her first run, and there was an interesting rest pattern. So Elliot had raced her in October, November, then gave her a bit of a break. December off, January off, comes back in February. Is he aiming her at the Cheltenham Festival? I'm not sure. That break may have been enforced. She may have been injured. I'm not 100% sure. But in any case, it looked interesting. She might have needed that run there. In any case, she ran on. She didn't blow a handicap mark. I'd have to watch that race again to kind of jog my memory. But again, she steps back up in trip, doing something different, unexposed. And then we've got the powerhouse that is Elliot. He's in form. Jack Kennedy's on board. She was 20 to 1 or whatever, 16 to 20 to 1. Big field, the thought that the big field and the pace she might be able to settle, this is what she actually might want. So to tip 2 horses in a 27 runner festival handicap, one of the most competitive handicaps of the week, and get first and third, win only on the nose, I was quite delighted with. And one of my Paul Nicholls angles wasn't too far from top of the game either. Clearly I should have done combination forecast and tricast, and as we go later in the week. One reader in particular, I think, copped about £11,000 on one of the races on the final day, doing just that. Well done him. So that's that race. Let's move on to the Fred Winter juvenile hurdle, of which I, if I find the right post, didn't do too well. I kind of went into this thinking, oh, it's heavy. These are young horses. They're off the flat. Not many of them had many runs over hurdles. I got into my mind that I wanted a more battle-hardened, streetwise horse, I think, that had a bit more experience in jumps races, but that proved to be foolish. Turning Gold ran okay. If he can ever learn to jump, he might be quite useful. He put in a shoddy round, really, and I think that cost him maybe finishing a couple of places ahead, but he was never going to beat the winner. Many members took 5 places. I'm very keen to make sure I declare to standard terms. So some people who backed him with 5 places may have got an extra 6 points on top of the total. So they'll have been nearing plus 100 points for the week. But I declared at 4, so I didn't count that in official results. He ran well. Mastermind, I will have to watch back again to see how well he did, but it turns out he probably wasn't good enough, but there was some method there. So let's just focus on those 2 horses for the moment. Both of them appeared at various places on my stats shortlists. Not as many places as Veneer of Charm, which you can see the red 1. Oh God, appears everywhere, doesn't it? It just gets worse. But no problems there. So they're the 2 horses I tipped as I tick around to 20 minutes. Style of Guard appeared on some of the stats and ran quite well. Clearly, these are very unexposed horses. I think what I wanted was the fact that, you know, Turning Gold had one more. He'd had four. This was his fourth run over hurdles. I thought Twist and Davis, some of them might like this muddy climb to the line, which Splash of Ginge certainly did later on in the week. In the end, he ran well, so we can't complain there. He was in form, unexposed. He hit some of my stats. I thought he was kind of battle hardened, that he might like the hustle and bustle of a big field race, and that's why I went with him. No problem there. Mastermind, I went with a big price. I think maybe Robbie Power being booked, him having ridden the horse a few times before interested me. He had run a kind of big field maiden hurdle, which was interesting enough. Then they put him in a kind of novice when he did okay. Then a grade 3, which he ran all right. And I thought, oh, small field, are they protecting the handicap mark? He didn't really do much. So, yeah, that's one I got wrong. We won't spend too much time on that. The one I clearly do want to spend time on is Veneer of Charm. A perfect example that, you know, form isn't really a great guide. And here we have Gordon Elliott doing a kind of Martin Pipe of turning a 58 to 75 rated flat horse into a superb handicap hurdler who apparently had an absolute stack in hand. I'm not sure why on earth I didn't tip this horse, and I will finish on kind of looking at Veneer of Charm. If you flick through, already in my mind, if I look at the first thing I said, which was before I actually looked at the stats, was I'm not too sure how helpful the stats are here. Could be a case of focusing on the usual suspects in Nichols, Elliott, Henderson, and Nick Williams, and I didn't tip from either. Gordon Elliott. Let's look at his Veneer of Charm. Where does he appear on the stats? There, already on that kind of breakdown. He's already on the main list of 11 that those three stats point to, which has helped. He's then never run at the distance score on the horse race base. There he is. First 1 to 3 career runs is a positive. That is over jumps, I should point out. Veneer of Charm appears there. 12 to 4 career runs is a positive. Active Villa, not second or third last time out. I'm not sure if that's an illogical stat, but there we go. There probably is some logic to that if I think about it. Veneer of Charm again ran in the race with 7 or more runners. Veneer of Charm again. Up keeps coming Veneer of Charm. And my eyes, to make it worse, were, because of this stat here, 5 of 10 winners sent off 25 to 1 or bigger, including a 40 to 1 shot. My eyes already focused on 25 to 1 or bigger horses. That is where I looked at in the market and in the race. And how on earth, when Gordon Elliott is in that sort of form, when Veneer of Charm, looking down here, appears on the trainer stats for the race here, 12 to 1 best, that is only a guide. So he appears there, and he appears on all of those stats below. I have no idea why I didn't. I'm not sure, active subconsciously, I was put off by the fact that I didn't view him as being battle hardened, so I'm on the wrong race there. And I'm not sure if I was, you know, this is a big error, put off by that speed rating of 92. Maybe I was subconsciously. I don't remember looking at him in much depth, but it's given his position in the market, given it was Elliott, given it was Kennedy, given the place he appeared on all those shortlists, I should have spent more time looking through all of those stats shortlists and all of those pointers in the micro pointers, and just actually maybe even writing down a list of the horse and seeing which horse appears against which lot how many times. And Veneer of Charm clearly would have stood out at that price with connections. I'm sure I'd have got myself into a place of going sod it. I did it with Blueberry. Let's take a chance at one that's 25 to 1 or bigger. If we look at his form, won a maiden hurdle, so had shown some form over jumps at least. Then in a kind of smaller field race, led, might have been a bit tactical, didn't do too much. That race at Navan only came 6 days later. Now, this is a small horse, as you might have seen on some of the pictures doing the rounds on Twitter, say when Gordon Elliott got all of his 8 winners lined up in a row. This is a very small framed horse off the flat. It's not impossible running 6 days later, just took it out of him. I did kind of register that before the race. I'm not quite sure what then happened between the thinking of glancing at him and not backing him. I'm not really 100% sure. I actually, yeah, maybe what probably did it as well. This is breaking. He was making his handicap hurdle debut here. And if I looked at Gordon Elliott's handicap hurdle debut stats, which haven't clicked up there, but I remember looking at the time, they weren't that brilliant. They were like 6 from 90 odd, I think. I'd have to go and check, and I didn't do this, what his record with such types is at the festival, and that is an error, and I'll never make that mistake again. He should have had at least half a point on, or in any case, he should have been quite a lot closer to my thinking. I didn't even mention him in the danger horses that would really piss me off if they won. I put in bold. For some reason, I didn't even mention him there. I'm not sure if I just had a brain blank. The days are long at the Cheltenham Festival. You do get worn down a bit when you have the approach and you look at the races I do. That's not to get the violins out because I absolutely love it. I'm like a pig in muck during this week of the year. But I've missed something there. So there we go. That's that. That's something for me to learn on, kind of assimilating and kind of joining up all the dots from all those different stats pointers. I did make that mistake last year before, probably in this same race. Clearly, I'm not a very fast learner at times. In other areas, I can be. And that's something for me to slap myself around the face with and learn for next time. I should have tipped the 33-1 winner of this race as well, and we should have had a 28-1 winner and a 33-1 winner on the day. I am a hard taskmaster. I am a relentless perfectionist when it comes to solving these puzzles, and you can hopefully see why I say that, because of the places that he appeared on within all of my stats pointers, and because it was Elliott, and because of the price the horse was. But I'll move on from that. Are there any other horses we should take from this? Nuba Negra I'd have to watch again, but I believe was quite keen. Certainly travelled for quite a long way. He may have just got bogged down in the rain and the muddy ground, but that is certainly one to keep an eye on. Paddle Your Own Canoe ran well. Another one for Tizzard. Going back through horses that ran well, trainers that had done well in these big races, no bad thing. And that's another thing I should probably add to my list. I could have paid a bit more attention, certainly come the Friday when Skelton and then Nichols get on the scoreboard. But yeah, I think that's that. I think that's it as I tick around the 27 minutes. I wanted that to be a bit shorter. But in any case, we took through onto day 2 and day 3. We had +3 there, and we took on to the next day a fair chunk of profit. But I will kind of leave that there for now as I tick around to 28 minutes. There's a kind of quick flick through the kind of profiles and why I was focused on those handicap hurdlers that I was, especially in the Coral Cup. And all those points I made about those horses are the things I think you and I should be looking for in festival handicaps, and if indeed big kind of grade 3 handicap hurdles moving forward for the rest of the spring. So hopefully you found some of those musings useful. Plenty there for me to take away. Plenty of positives on the stats, plenty of negatives in terms of my own thinking. I've just about got over veneer of charm, but it's probably evident to a point that, to an extent, I also haven't. So, on that bombshell, learn the lessons, move on, and try and never make the mistake again, which I probably will. There was plenty of positives to take from there, and there was plenty of profit. The festival had been made on a profit-making front. Whatever I did now, if I kept my discipline and stuck to my betting bank, we were going to come out ahead. And that is a great position to be in. It suddenly frees you up for the next couple of days to come, and we can have plenty more fun, which is exactly what we did. So until the videos of day 3 and 4, this is me saying thanks for watching. I know, another long trudge, but everything I've said there I think was worth it. And until the next time, this is me saying thanks for watching and bye for now.